What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Real Fans FC. And we got an interesting one today. We're going to be talking about basically every team that is entering their first World Cup this year. And we're going to be kind of not necessarily stack ranking, but we're going to be giving which team we think will perform the best and make it out of the group stage for their first ever World Cup, or who can surprise some people. Maybe not even make it out of the group stage, but who will just in general perform the best. Because more than likely, if we had to guess, neither of these teams are going to make it out of the group, but who's going to look the most competitive? And those teams are Cape Verde, Curacao, Jordan, and Uzbekistan. I'm going to pass it over to you, Will, first. Who is your pick for going to be the best debutante performance in the 2026 World Cup?
Yeah, honestly, such a good question. It's such a juicy one as well. It's literally this is a multiple choice. You got option A, B, C, and D. You look at option A and B. Curacao, dude, that's choice of elimination. You know what I mean? They're kind of like that answer when you're looking at it, and it's just like, God damn, dude, you got to feel for the team.
They might be the weakest team in the entire tournament.
In the entire tournament, it's rough, dude. It's just not looking good. And then on top of that, I really feel bad for Curacao because not only they're coming in here already a little bit injured, underperformed. Obviously, I don't know if you saw the news, Julian. Their head coach is leaving. He's having a lot of family matters, things like that. So he's not even going to be going into the World Cup. Yeah. So it really just, there's a lot going against Curacao right now. I feel like, I hate to say it, this island is just the joy of being there. I think the fans are going to be vibing. They're going to be excited to go to games. And I think that's pretty much it for the most part. It's going to be tough, a real tough show. So not Curacao for sure. I look at a team like you said, Cape Verde, good team. Obviously, I think they have a lot more debt, but I think it's just not with the group that they have as well. Obviously, a potential winner in Spain, a team who can make a far run in an Uruguay, and then a team like a Saudi Arabia who, usually performs at World Cups. And we saw like in the last one as well, we're able to beat an Argentina. So I think Cabo Verde, I think they've got a really tough draw. I think they can make some noise, but it's going to be tough. And then you look at Uzbekistan and Jordan for me. I'm leaning personally, and I don't know if you might agree with me on this one, but I look a little bit more towards Jordan. Uzbekistan, and the reason I say Jordan is purely based off of the draw. If the Uzbeks get DR Congo, I mean, dude, it's sliced bread. They're cooked. It's toast. Like, I just don't feel that Colombia and Portugal are going to be two haymakers of games. And then on top of that, DR Congo, that's no easy. Well, that's going to be a haymaker of a game. So I'm leaning towards the Jordanians, just, looking at the group, looking at the team. They're facing an Algeria team, obviously within Africa, but a team that they familiar, there's going to be probably a little bit, a couple familiar faces within some of these guys in similar leagues and things like that. Obviously with an Austria as well, maybe, see how they can play with them. I just really feel like the Jordanians, I feel like they have a shout in this group. It's not much of one, but I feel like there is a shout for them to potentially get a third place and maybe upset like an Austria and get out of the group.
Yeah, actually, I completely agree with you. I kind of went back and forth with them and Cape Verde and Uzbekistan, but then I narrowed it down to Jordan and Uzbekistan, and then I was just like, you know what, man? I think from what I've seen from Jordan recently, they've had a good little like run of results, and like you said, I think they have the most favorable group out of all of them. I mean, it's not like obviously Argentina reigning champions because they're going to be competing for the entire thing, but you have an Austrian team that's really good, but I think they're not going to absolutely embarrass Jordan. Now it could happen, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And same thing with Algeria. So, and I'm not even really going based off points, but I look at like who's going to be the most competitive, who's going to look good, the best. I just see a world where Uzbekistan just gets slaughtered. Like quite honestly, like I think it's possible, but that they won't. I don't. I look. I'll take this back. I don't think they're going to get slaughtered, but it's possible. I will say that. I'm leaving it on the table. I do think in general they're going to be competitive.
Like, let me take that comment back before I get roasted.
Because it could easily and very quickly, like if you look at a team like Colombia is a really good example of a team who could run it up on like smaller nations. They've done it multiple times. We look at Portugal, who has the talent to run it up on a team like them. So I think it's just a very unfavorable draw for Uzbekistan. And then we look at like a DR Congo, which is most likely going to be the Path 1 winner. that's a very, very talented team that pound for pound they just can't compete with. So I just have a hard time picking them to get out of the group or even necessarily perform well getting a result. It's going to be really tough. But then I look at a Jordanian team who, like you said, like they're going to go out there compete. They have a lot of like familiar friendlies. They're very familiar with outside of Asia, I should say. I was going to say Africa. Versus you look at Uzbekistan, who just kind of recently started dabbling with friendlies out of interconfederational friendlies, versus a Jordan who had a pretty good Arab Cup, but obviously a lot of those were B teams. They weren't necessarily like the best of the best. But a team like Algeria, like you said, they're very familiar with. An Austrian team that is very good, but they're not the likes of a Colombia or a DR Congo or a Portugal. So I just think they had a really good World Cup qualifying campaign. They looked good against South Korea. Granted, they are going to be out one of their star strike or attackers in the front, but they still got some talent there across the board. I think just overall they're the most balanced team. They're going to be competing the most. So with that being said, I really have Jordan being the best debutant in this 2026 World Cup. But
Now, let
yeah,
let me ask you this: does Cabo Verde have a shout of getting out of the group?
I was looking at them, and the problem is I think Spain's going to destroy them. And that's going to be really Spain's another one that just knows how to run up the score on people. And we talked about them like in my power rankings, I have them number one. Uruguay, maybe they can make it interesting. I think it's possible. A Saudi Arabia team that could be interesting, but I don't know if they're going to be able to score on Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is very like dead in the attack, but um, they're able to like really hold down defensively. And we even saw that at the most recent Gold Cup that they attended, which I would say Cape Verde is the equivalent of like a Gold Cup level team, I would say. So I think it's possible. It's not the worst group in the world because if you look at that Saudi Arabia, but I don't know. Like I said, if my criteria is not necessarily based off results, but just general performance, I just feel like top to bottom, if we look at Jordan, they're just going to look like a more dangerous team than a Cape Verde. A team in Cape Verde, mind you, they had a pretty like smooth group, a pretty easy group into the World Cup qualifying. I mean, their one heavy hitter was Cameroon, and they ended up topping them, and they didn't even play in the most recent AFCON, so that hurts them a lot as well. Not having like
Yeah,
super competitive matches to play against. So
good point.
like I said, I looked at them, but I think Jordan, they give me the most hope. And I just feel like that's a really competitive group that they can really go out because they may not even be last. Like I'm not even entirely sure they're
Yeah,
going to be last place. Like there's a real possibility that they get third and get out. Versus if I look at
yeah.
the other three teams, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think if we look at Cape Verde in their group, I think Saudi Arabia is going to have a better GD than Cape Verde. Even though I don't necessarily
Unfortunately,
rate Saudi Arabia that high either.
yeah. Unfortunately, it just feels like, honestly, at least for me, I think Cape Verde has one good game. I think they have one. It's not going to be against Spain. I think it's either that Uruguay or it's either going to be that Saudi Arabia game where they're going to go guns blazing and Logan Costa and Steven Moreira and everybody on the field, swears that they're going to be CR7 that day. And they're going to be shooters, they're going to be ballers, they're going to be hoopers. They're going to be turning into prime Kobe Bryant on that field. And they're going to be shooting from all over the goddamn field. And like I said, I genuinely believe that. And like you said, I look at Cape Verde's group, and you obviously have the pound for pound John Jones, number one heavyweight champ in Spain, leading the line. So that's obviously you can kind of get rid of them. You know they're going to win the group more than likely. That's out of the way. But then you look at a Uruguay team, and they're obviously one of these. They're a former World Cup champ. 15-time winners of the Copa America. All this history and legacy. But Uruguay's been in the dumps, man. They really have. And this is a
Yeah.
team that a lot of time relies on that World Cup pedigree or that history and things like that. And as of recent years in tournament ball, Julian, I just haven't seen it. This last Copa America was okay, but arguably they were in the second weakest group. And I'm even saying that as a Panamanian fan myself. So, it wasn't anything crazy. I feel like as of recent, they've just kind of been flimsy. Cabo Verde can do something. I don't want to take that away. And I'm not saying like right now to all our Cape Verdeans watching around the world, I don't want them thinking, I am saying, hey, there's no shot of this happening. This is not realistic. There is a chance. There is a shot. It's still going to be tough. It is going to be fighting off of a hill. So it's not something that I think could happen, but it is something very easily potentially could happen.
All right. Let me ask you this. Which team
Mhm.
is the most dangerous? Like, say we get rid of the groups that they're in, you power rank them. How do you have it? Like, who's the team you don't want to
Yeah.
face out of the four?
Who's the team that they could stir the pot up a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna keep it real, dude. I'm gonna keep it on Cabo Verde. I
Okay.
think they're the team. They're physical. They're well rounded. I mean, Julian, dude, you look at the team. They're not bum FC, And the other thing is like a lot of these guys. You look at like the Jordanian team. A lot of them play within and still strong competitive leagues, but within Asia. In the UAE league or in the Qatari Stars League, things like that. A lot of them are already there. Uzbekistan, kind of the same. A lot of them play in the Uzbek league. You have guys kind of in Turkey now and Russia and things like that. Still good, solid, competitive leagues. But you look at this team, like Logan Costa plays over at Villarreal. Steven Moreda, who plays over at Columbus Crew. And they've got a bunch of guys over in the Eredivisie, and in the Netherlands. So, like, there's a team that you can tell they're cooking with something. Now, I will say, though, I like the point that you did say about AFCON. I think that's a huge blow for Cabo. I really do. I think not being at that AFCON to really test themselves and to really just get good reps in and strong, solid games, competitive games at that, I think it's going to cost them a little bit. But I will say this is definitely a team. I mean, dude, they're physical. They're not afraid. And I really feel like when you talk about the X factor of they have nothing to lose, it's Cabo Verde.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is honestly like I know I asked the question, but I have a tough time picking it. Uh, I mean, if you look at like pound for pound, player for player, I almost want to go Uzbekistan, because like they just have some really dangerous players on the field, and so does Jordan. But I guess what gets me with the Jordan, and the thing with Jordan is missing out one of their big attacking pieces is that's a huge blow. That's a really huge blow. So, I mean, I'm probably going to go with Uzbekistan as like probably the most dangerous out of the four. I think they just had a very unfortunate group where their group is super, super tough. I think Uzbekistan has the attacking talent. They have some youth to go up and down the field. Like, I think like I would probably rank them ahead, but it is close. I will say that between the three of them, it's close. Curacao is the obvious fourth for me, but I don't think that gap between Uzbekistan, Jordan, Cape Verde is really like that like massive. I think that's where you start to get a drop off when you look at a Curacao. But anyways, if you guys like the content, please feel free to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out, everybody.